in my opinion, the best and only way to do true self-improvement is through doing shadow work. So what is the shadow? Or what is shadow work, I should say? Shadow work is looking at all of your deepest insecurities, bringing them to light and confronting them and becoming a stronger person. If I had to define it in the simplest way possible, that's what it is. However, shadow work, if you YouTube it, if you Google it, it gives you a very feminine version of shadow work, which isn't going to help. Ironically, it's not going to help most women, but it's definitely not going to help most men. And so in this video, I'm going to cover exactly why shadow work has sort of been ruined or almost like feminized too much to the point where it actually doesn't even really help most people. And I'm going to tell you the problem with it, and also more importantly, give you a solution to actually doing real shadow work. So the most liked and best feedback that I've gotten on any video on this channel is actually talking about shadow work. And in that video, I promised to give you a little bit more of an idea of how to actually do shadow work. So I'm going to be explaining that in this video. And the best way for me to explain how to do it is to explain how not to do it. So if you Google or YouTube shadow work, typically what you'll see is a bunch of shadow work prompts. You can buy these like prompts in these books, and a lot of times the questions are actually pretty good. Instead of like positive affirmations being like, what are 3 things I like about myself? What are 3 things that are great about me? That's a lot of like typical self-improvement, right? Shadow work prompts will be more in line with something like, why do I suck? Why do I not deserve success? Why do people hate me? And then so you answer that, and you're able to in theory, you make your unconscious conscious, and you're able to observe it and then kind of see reality for how it is, all right? Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I just think that, especially for men, that's not enough. And more specifically, in the modern day, we're becoming much more introverted. And because we're becoming much more introverted in our own heads, yes, doing shadow work prompts, writing stuff down helps, but what helps even more is actually vocalizing those things. And especially men nowadays, we have been conditioned from a young age and shamed now for speaking our minds. If we do that, it's toxic masculinity. We're afraid of saying the wrong thing, upsetting the wrong people. You know, if you upset the wrong guy, that guy's gonna punch you. If you're a girl and you upset the wrong guy, typically you're gonna have a guy defend you, and it's very rare nowadays that some other random guy is gonna beat you for saying the wrong thing. I mean, this isn't like the frickin' 1800s anymore, okay? So men are much more reserved and much more cautious about the things they say than ever before. Men, especially nowadays, are much more passive. And so all you're doing, if you're doing a shadow work prompt, is that you are sort of reinforcing that passivity. Oh, instead of confronting the fact, or actually confronting my shadow, a lot of times for most guys, is that they're afraid of confrontation. They're afraid of verbal altercations. They're afraid of raising their voice and speaking their mind. Instead of doing that, they'll just do shadow work prompts, and then you just feel like nice and good about yourself, even though you haven't actually tackled the problem. Most guys' fears nowadays have to do with other people. So when you're doing true shadow work, it should involve other people. A good example to hit home this point is Fight Club, which is a fantastic movie. Fight Club is basically all about the shadow. Tyler Durden is the narrator's shadow. And the entire tale is about how Ed Norton, the narrator, was so fed up with having a persona that he had to put on that he created a personification of his shadow in the form of Tyler Durden, and he followed what Tyler did. He followed him, and then with that example, other men who were going through the same exact thing in their lives, leading quiet lives of desperation, ended up actually, embracing that shadow side of themselves. It's also a cautionary tale of saying, okay, well, don't take your shadow too far. Integrate the good parts of it and leave the bad parts out. Part of the problem in Fight Club is that he just took Tyler Durden as a whole and became Tyler Durden. But what's really great about that movie is that there's a congregation of men. These men came together saying, yes, there's this side of ourselves we don't like. We want to embrace our masculinity. Let's do that by beating the shit out of each other. Because in their daily corporate jobs, in the modern world in which they have to behave and be good little boys raised by their mommies, They have to put up this face. They're not allowed to speak their opinions. They're not allowed to be violent and aggressive. And so with them being able to punch each other in the face and fight each other, that's the one little moment in their lives where they're actually able to do that. And then they don't show this too much in the movie, but you could sort of deduce that potentially this carried over into their real lives to make them better men. The fact that they were able to do this in a controlled setting and they were actually able to feel happier throughout their daily lives that otherwise kind of suck. So if the shadow is basically all the things that you hide from society, you hide from yourself because you're afraid to be your true self because of the opinions of others, why in the world would it make sense for you to primarily do shadow work by yourself without other people seeing it? Right? Without the judgment of other people. It's just masturbation at that point. As Tyler Durden says in the movie, self-improvement is masturbation. That is a masturbatory exercise if you're just doing shadow work prompts without having other people to do shadow work with. Now, women tend to be more socially adept creatures. When you see anybody who has autism or anything on the spectrum, for the most part it's men, right? And so with women, they already are a little bit more naturally attuned to other people's feelings, their own feelings, being able to have social interactions, even if they feel judged by other people. At the very least, most of them tend to be quite socially adept, right? A lot of guys are not socially adept at all. And because of that, they struggle a lot in their lives. And so I think what most guys should do in the modern day is do sort of a similar form of Fight Club. It doesn't necessarily need to be like martial arts, actually kicking the crap out of each other, although that helps for a lot of reasons, help boost your confidence and whatnot. I think guys need to become more confident in being verbally adept. And so if you could do sort of this is how I do shadow work, is I have a group of guys and we all just kind of talk shit. We don't just talk shit for the sake of talking shit. We'll do like a shadow work prompt of like, oh, what we think we're insecure about. Why aren't we good enough for X, Y, Z? And then the other person will confront that person on it, right? So for example, if somebody's like, oh, I feel like I'm not very good looking. I'm not very confident. Girls don't like me. I'm never going to be able to find a good girl to marry and have kids and have that successful, like American dream type of life. And then so in a good shadow work session, either your coach or another person doing shadow work will basically play that shadow side. They'll play all the doubts in your mind. They'll be like, yeah, you suck, dude. Like you're kind of ugly and you're kind of stupid and you fumble over your words all the time. Why in the hell would any girl like you, dude? And then so what you could do after that, being on the receiving end of it, when you're on the receiving end of it, it hurts. You're like, oh crap. Like you're saying the things that I believe about myself deep down. But also a part of you wants to fight, especially as a man. You're like, you know what? Fuck you, dude. You think I'm all this? Actually, you know what? There's some parts of myself that are actually pretty fucking great, right? I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And you know what? You're one to talk, you motherfucker. You're fucking uglier than me. I'm taller than you. I'm more jacked than you. So shut the fuck up, right? And then ideally in a good shadow work session, both people have their insecurities on the line. They attack each other's insecurities. And sometimes they'll acknowledge their own insecurities and they won't deny it. So that way, using other people sort of as like a mirror, as a reflection back to you about your own insecurities, you're able to strengthen each other in that process. It's basically the same thing as Fight Club, except you're fighting each other with your words. And in the process, you're becoming more verbally adept as well. That is the best way to actually do self-improvement, to strengthen yourself against your insecurities. You tell other people that you trust in a controlled setting your insecurities. Those people attack you based off of those insecurities in order to strengthen you. And then you do the same for them. And by doing that, there's a sort of a camaraderie and a trust and friendship that forms as a result. Speaking of friendship, in a Nietzschean worldview, Nietzsche believed that true friends are people who challenge each other, people who don't have just like this happy, rosy thing and all agree with each other. They actually actively disagree with each other and fight each other in order to help each other become stronger. That is what masculine friendship is. And you do not see that with this feminized version of shadow work. Look, if you're a woman and you just like doing shadow work prompts and you don't like having verbal altercations in order to strengthen yourself, I totally get it, because that is a masculine form of doing things, right? A more feminine form of doing things is like writing your feelings down, making each other just feel good, and that's it. With men, we feel good when we're fighting each other. Even just our friends, among our friends, right? If we're fighting each other, we feel good. So that is the type of shadow work that we should be doing. If you don't believe me, get some friend that you really trust, all right? And then try something like this. Literally just say, hey, each of you guys, okay, list out 3 insecurities, and then each of you attack each other based off those insecurities. And I'm telling you, after like 10 minutes or so, you'll see that this will last a while. You'll be like, it'll start to actually be kind of fun, because we have all this sort of like repressed aggression, violence within us, and we feel bad and ashamed about it. And then we're allowed to do it. And then it's sort of like if you've just been holding something in for a while, for such a long time, for your whole life, and then you just break down crying. It's a similar thing with men, except with aggression. That's why like the stereotypical nice guy, whenever he actually stands up for himself, he overdoes it, right? And he just explodes because he's been repressing those feelings in for such a long time. But I'm telling you, after you do that shadow work session, both of you will feel so cathartic. You'll feel so amazing, similar to how in Fight Club, after the guys are pummeling each other, they'll be crying and hugging each other and being like, oh my God, I love you. I needed this so much, man. Tyler Durden, thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. That's what's happening there, is you don't feel judged for your masculine nature of wanting to be aggressive, wanting to be violent, and you're actually doing it and expressing it in a healthy manner. And you're not being judged for it. And other men are congregating and supporting you in that effort as you do that to them too. And nobody gets too hurt in the process if you do it correctly. Because sometimes if you just do shadow work, and like sometimes people aren't, they're not ready for that level of realness. And so typically what I do with my clients is I'll make sure that they list out their insecurities first, and then I attack them, or I have my other clients attack them based off the insecurities they listed out. So for example, if somebody's like, oh, I'm short, I don't make a lot of money, I'm not really good at talking, and I'm insecure about my success with girls, and they're clearly are like super balding, right? But they don't mention the balding thing. Well, if you start attacking them and calling them baldy and whatever, you idiot, you freaking, egghead, they might not be ready for that yet. They might not be strong enough for that yet, right? Otherwise, and they're still hiding it. Now, eventually, over time, they should be able to confront that thing and bring it out into the open. But a lot of times, guys aren't ready for that. And typically what I've seen in my clients is that, okay, if there's some clear insecurity that they have that they're not verbalizing, once they're like a little bit more comfortable with it, over time, they'll actually be willing to say it, but it needs to come from them, right? I might be able to suggest it, take them to the side and be like, hey, it seems like you're insecure about this thing. Is that true? But it's the same thing within a fight, right? Like if you've never fought anybody before, do you really want to just fight like the biggest guy possible at the start? Of course not. You have to build up to it. So it's a similar thing. All this to say, I want to try to keep self-improvement, philosophy, all that type of stuff very practical here. And the worst possible thing that can happen is that you just make it mental masturbation. And if you're just writing stuff down, just writing your feelings down, yes, it can help, but a lot of times it's still mental masturbation. The vast majority of people nowadays in a more introverted society, in a more introverted world, where you can basically just never leave your house and still be able to sustain yourself, especially if you work online or if you work remotely. People are more afraid of confrontation, more afraid of people nowadays than ever. And so if that's the case, when you're doing true shadow work, you have to work with other people. You have to confront your shadow in the form of another person who talks back to you. And that way you strengthen yourself verbally, you strengthen yourself socially, and you actually get over your social fears. This is something that I do not see women promoting, unfortunately. And women are leading the movement with the shadow work stuff, which I think is great, but it's more from a feminine point of view. When it comes to self-improvement books, most people don't know this, and the self-improvement world, even in the dating world, whatever you call it, it's mostly women. Most men are like, I can do this, I don't need help. Women tend to be much more receptive to getting help. When I was a personal trainer in person, full time, the vast majority of clients, not just for myself, but other trainers were women, because women are more likely to ask for help. They have less of an ego when it comes to being like, no, I'm capable, I can do this. With men, it's much more rare for them to do that. But because of that, there's sort of this, I guess, what's the right word? Selection bias, maybe, that happens, or maybe survivorship bias, where because more women are into self-improvement than men are, it doesn't seem that way on the internet, but it's actually true if you just look at the numbers, then things like shadow work are mostly going to be, when you Google it, it's mostly going to be tailored toward a feminine way of thinking, because more women are looking it up than men. And so part of the mission of this channel is to bring shadow work to men, do a masculine form of it. I think one of the reasons that men aren't so drawn to shadow work the way women are is because it doesn't appeal to that masculine nature of theirs as much. It doesn't appeal to that violent, aggressive side of themselves. And doing sort of more like a verbal fight club type of thing is actually the way in which to make it something that's more appealing to men. And so I'm going to cover shadow work a lot more on this channel. And yes, I actually do have a coaching program for shadow work. We meet weekly, and it's called Verbal Fight Club, man. I'll usually have like a debate topic, or we'll list out our insecurities, and then we'll attack each other based on it, we'll strengthen each other. And it's really great. I've done this in shadow work in person as well. It's the best form of self-help, especially for the modern man in a fractionated, atomized society where guys are just more and more afraid of socializing, talking to other people, and become more and more introverted. So if you actually want to get into shadow work, all you have to do is just sign up on my Patreon. And then after that, you get a 50% discount on any of my shadow work coaching calls, coaching services. It can be one-on-one with me. It can be in a group setting, which is a cheaper option, and also potentially even a better option. But some people, it takes them a while to build up to that. But regardless of that, if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and click the link down below. You could also message me on Instagram. Happy to help you out. Regardless, if you don't want coaching from me, perfectly fine. You just want to watch my YouTube channel, figure shit out on your own, that's cool too. So I'm going to be providing a lot more instructions on how to actually do shadow work on this channel for free as well. Let me know your thoughts about shadow work. Do I sound like a crazy person? I know I assumed a lot saying that masculinity is inherently violent, aggressive. I know that's not like a cool thing to say nowadays, but I think it's objectively true. And yeah, I just want to know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. If you're a woman, I apologize. I didn't mean to insult you. It's just that men and women are different, and men and women, if we are different, we need different forms of self-improvement in order to get better. Anyhow, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.